Ding, ding, ding. And then we'll explore more what goes into image. So now that we've talked about personal, does professional differ?
Yes.
Okay. So before we do that, somebody read what we say that personal branding is. And yell out the words you think are important to that definition.
The ongoing process of establishing a prescribed image or impression in the mind of others about an individual, group, or organization.
So what words would you shout out?
Ongoing.
That's my ding ding ding. What else?
Prescribed. Mind.
Okay. And what's the second thing? Somebody read that for us. And it's kind of what Russell said.
It's everything that reflects who you are.
Everything. So I would shout out everything that reflects who you are as a person. And the next one?
Everything excludes the identity of a person individually.
Okay, so do you think that personal brand is important?
Yes.
It's almost vital. What about professional brand? What do you think there's a difference?
Yes.
What comes into play when we start talking about personal versus professional?
Sure, well, it's kind of what we were talking about in the last emotional intelligence, where she was saying the way that you interact with your friends and your coworkers are different. So you might have more of a laid-back feeling with your friends and have a personal brand with them more so than you do at work. You share more of a professional, more of a polished version of yourself. Hopefully that's the goal.
Okay. And let's talk now about just that formal definition. So, and notice I put correct in parentheses. I extracted this from a lot of different resources. But what's a formal definition for professional branding? I'll just wait on you to read it. That's all.
A correct personal brand makes certain an individual has identified, understands, and can communicate exactly who she or he is, what she or he does, why anyone should care to remember him or her. Personal branding is the practice of people marketing themselves and their careers.
Get it? So the addition, when you layer that, your personal brand is like really who you are, what's your personality, how you interact with people. And then when you start talking about your professional, and it should basically say professional, but it's the practice of marketing your sales, and in marketing your sales in your workplace, you're marketing your career. And so that's where we're here to talk about really how do you successfully market your sales and market your career. So somebody talk to me about image, and let me take my definition away. How do I develop an image about you? Based on what?
What you see.
What? Number one, what I see. What else?
Experiences between each other.
When you say experiences between each other, what happens?
Well, like conversations, seeing someone in the hallway,
Interactions. Okay. So from all of that, a person gets an impression about you that's called your image, right? So formally, what is it? Know the definition. Same thing.
Visual representation of who you are or who others think you are.
Russell.
Perceptions of you based on how you look or act.
And I want you to underscore look, and I want you to underscore act. And those are the ones that we would shout out. And I put that in there because one of the most painful points for me as an HR manager since I've been here is dress code. So tell your managers, I am not the dress code police. That is not my role. That is not my role. I don't see you. They see you every day. I don't see you. But I do turn. One day I'm in the ladies' restroom on 7 and somebody walks in and they have on, the new workout pants with the mesh inserts in it. And I just was washing my hand and I went, and I said it out loud. But to an extent, what you look like is as important as how you act, and that's the point with that when we start talking about image. And I want to go through this quickly because I want us to do more role playing and exercise when we get to Tremaine's part of the presentation. So if you looked at brand to your left, that describes like what your brand is and what people see, kind of your image. And then on the left-hand side, we're talking more image, and on the right-hand side, we're talking more brand. So when we talk about your image, people can see how you walk, how you talk, how you look, how you behave, and how you interact, to your point. But when you start looking at your brand, what's layered over your image is the fact that what are your personal or professional strengths? What are your areas where you're challenged and need improvement? What are your individual and personal values? What is your personal vision, whether that's about the company, about your career, and what skills do you have? And that's where your image intersects your brand. So what people see, and then what abilities do you have and what qualities do you possess as it relates to your job or your career. And so if you layer those two, that is basically what goes into your brand. What you look like, walk like, talk like, interact, how you interact, how you behave, coupled with whether or not you have all the job skills for the position. So that would be your skills. Whether you have the vision for the position, a vision for your career, whether you embrace that stuff I teach in the Kool-Aid part of New Hire Orientation, mission, vision, and values, are you embracing that? What are your personal values? And then what areas do you need improvement again? And then what are your strengths? So that becomes your professional or personal brand. So, who wants to answer that question?
Absolutely.
Oh, most definitely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Your social set, anything you put on socially that impacts you professionally.
Can you say that louder for me?
All right, well, let's go ahead and do it. What you do socially will impact your career
Okay.
on a professional level,
So-
9 times out of 10.
So do you know that there have been instances in my role where there was a team member who posted something disparaging about the company, or they were acting out to a point where their mamas would have been embarrassed to have seen them at that particular time, and it got back to work. And then it landed on my desk. So you're absolutely correct. And so, the social media presentation is down there, well, upstairs in the Bangalore, but that's part of that presentation. That your social media presence can either make or break your professional career. So always keep that in mind. So when you turn it up, just make sure that, hey, you got the right filters. Seriously, the right filters lock people out, because I don't want to see you turning up the way I've seen some team members turn up. So basically, though, well, I've seen it. And there may be some times I don't want you to see.
Like I said, are you on lockdown?
I'm locked down.
You sure?
I got too much to lose. I'm locked down. And then, but okay, now I'm a real grown woman, so I don't come from an era where you live your life on social media, and I don't do a blow by blow, or now I'm at the store, or I don't do that. I don't check in, and if I check in, I check in from church. Go to my Facebook page and see check it in, at the church sermon today. Text, Mark the 5th chapter, 21st verse. Y'all think I'm playing. Yeah, but I did post the night we were in the foundation room one day. Andre, I'm gonna quit telling our secrets. So your public image should reflect who you are and what you stand for. And so your public image is your professional brand. Your image drives people's impression of you, your professional reputation, and your personal values. And I don't know if y'all had a mother like mine, but my mom would tell me when we got ready to leave the house, you better act like you my child. child, and don't be out there acting crazy and not representing the Duncans when you go out the door. I'm really serious, because I lived in a time where I had a 3-block walk to the bus stop, and if I did or said something by the time I got to the next block, Miss Johnson said that you were down there talking loud on the corner. I'm really serious. So you see these two, this handsome gentleman and this just fine sister right there. But seriously, that was a glamour shot as I was elected to lead a women's group of over 600 women, and I needed like shots for like media and that kind of stuff. And so anyway, so the photographer says that this is always the power shot, for a woman. So if you saw that, and I should have brought a contrasting picture, huh? I'm doing that to y'all. Anyway, but that's really, look at Tremaine's pictures. And these are our photos from the lobby. And I see a lot of lobby photos. And that is part of your brand as well. And did you know, do you have a profile on the lobby? Okay, if you don't, please get one. You need a photo, and then you need to fill out that little part that talks about who you are and what your experience is. Because as a hiring manager, if you apply for a position and you were transferring to the department and I don't know you, the first place I'm gonna go is to the lobby and look at your photo, and I'm gonna look at your little self-profile that's there. So that's real important to your brand. But this part is gonna be really fun. So how is your brand being represented on the lobby? So again, make sure you check your brand on the lobby. So this part is gonna be fun. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flash a photo, and I want your first impression. No. What's your impression?
Classy, professional, business-like.
Okay, classy, professional, prestige. What about her morals and her values? Okay, so that's the impression that you get, right? What about that picture? So his image kind of changed, right?
Yeah,
Because before he met Megan, what was he?
he was a wild child.
He's a wild child, party animal.
Black sheep.
Yes, he was. Of the royal family,
He looks like I'm waiting for it.
And he turned up and he put it on social media. And unfortunately, based on his royalty, that went all over the world. But now, I totally forgot about that until I saw this picture. And then I thought, this is a real positive, polished image. But then I was looking at it yesterday and I thought, Prince Henry had a... But anyway, that he's an example of the fact that you can change that. Now, it takes a lot of work, but you can.
You can change that. Not only that, one of the great things about it is that in this day and age, we have a lot of recency bias, if you will, for better or for worse, where people will look at where are you today, the last year, the last 2 years, versus your history 10 years or 15 years ago, if you happen to have been a wild child as is Prince Harry. So there's that opportunity to change one's vision, change one's perception about themselves, so that even what your perception is today is not set in stone. It can always evolve, even for greater good.
Great, Tremaine. What about this photo?
Just shady.
Innocent, okay, yes.
We know more about him now because like, why did you do that?
And we still may not know the truth. Huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. We still may not know the truth.
10 years from now, he can be
An Academy Award winner.
So it's possible.
So what about this one? You know who that is?
Oh, yeah, Laura McLaughlin, or whatever her name is.
This criminal.
Maybe I'm not bad.
College gate. College gate.
Educated.
Yeah. But isn't that something? Isn't that something? And she played on the best little mom and pop show, and everybody was just innocent, and all of a sudden, here goes her name. I had the other people up there too. We selected her. But literally, so are you getting what I'm talking about when we're talking about brand and image? And you may not have the notoriety of any of those people, but you have a circle that you travel in, and those people are watching your image. And so every day when you walk in the building, you need to decide who you're going to be. And usually you need to be pretty consistent about what that definition is. So I'm a proponent of, so I came out of college in the 80s, right? I worked in one of the largest CPA firms in the country. What did I wear to work every day? I wore pantyhose, closed-toe pumps, what else? Couldn't even wear a dress.
Not without pantyhose. If you did.
Can wear a dress. If I had a dress, it had to have on a matching blazer.
Yeah.
I wore black, charcoal gray, navy blue. I may accent it with a red tie or pin or something like that, but it was formal business dress every day. Now, the CPA firms have evolved, and you do see them in business dress, in business casual, but the majority of that population is still client-facing, so they are formally dressed. So when we start looking at like how we look, it becomes like a challenge in an environment where we're told that basically our dress code is dress your day, right? It's casual, but it's dress your day. So if you're going to a hotel, would you go like, can you use no examples? But anyway, I mean seriously, so would you wear your flip-flops and your jeans, and would you wear my Longhorn shirt that says Pink Love Texas? I mean seriously. And I've seen some stuff here, but I've also seen some people lately who have a very defined way that they look every day, and sometimes those are the people that I see advancing. Because I don't care how casual we get, you don't get so casual that you look like you're coming to work and you don't care what you look like. In one of those roles at a hospital, even with a nurse, one of the doctors said to me, do something about her, and this was his surge tech, and he said, because she looks like every morning she just roll out of bed, pick those scrubs up off the floor, and put them on and come to work, because she was always rough dried and that kind of stuff. But my point is that it's important. So I see the best of casual dress code, and then sometimes I see the worst of casual dress code. So there is a way to dress up a pair of jeans. So if you're unsure about how your day is going to play out, bring a jacket or bring a sweater and keep it at your desk or on the back of your door if you're fortunate enough to have an office. And you'd be surprised how a polo and a pair of jeans and a pair of casual shoes, even our VP Mike Holman was just here, and he had on those shoes that I like that are leather with the white soles, and they look like leather tennis shoes. That's what he had on, and he's a VP. But quickly, he could have taken off his suit coat and been a lot less casual. So just keep that in mind, because sometimes I think we fall short in that area. So now I'm going to show you a slide right before Tremaine comes to you, and I extracted this from a presentation called A Brand New You that was presented to the University of, it's called the University of College Women and Educators. And this was a personal branding presentation, and I'm sorry that you can't see it. But in this little circle going around, it has professional brand in the middle. So this now, the elevator speech, Tremaine's going to talk to you because that now is your branding statement. So I kind of classified these. So I took Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Pinterest, and I classified those as your social media presence. So would it surprise you that people get an impression from you by you sending them a business email? So there's an etiquette for email. So if you are writing in all caps, or you decide to put, low, high, angry in red, and you put it in caps, that is totally unprofessional. So that plays into how do you communicate? Are you building a network? I believe in being my authentic self, so when Tremaine goes back and says, do you any of you know that Cassie Gossip down in Dallas? He's gonna say, she is a trip. And I'm gonna say okay, because that's partially true. But I just believe, honestly, work is too stressful and life is too stressful to take yourself seriously. You gotta have some fun, and especially at New Hire orientation, because y'all are sitting there like, oh my God, it's my first day. Nobody's gonna like me, and I'm new. Am I gonna be able to do the job? So I try to make you relax. What does your business card look like? So are you gonna put on your, my dad always called me Pokey because he said I move slow. So am I gonna put Pokey on my business card in quotes, put Cassie Pokey Gossip? Okay, so the way your business card looks is important. I'm really serious. What about now you have gone to the point where you have your resume out there, and you've sent the cover letter, because that all what your resume looks like, the content of your cover letter, all of that is your brand. Now you've gotten the interview. Did you prepare for the interview, or are you just gonna shoot from the hip? Because you know that landing that interview after that resume and or that cover letter is how you respond in that interview. Those interview questions are designed to look at your values, your level of communication, how you would interact. When you've had a behavioral interview question, have they ever asked you, have you ever had a situation where you and a coworker didn't agree, and how did you handle it, and what was the situation? So we're talking emotional intelligence for those of you who just left. So they are literally evaluating you by your interview responses. People take this question in an interview very for granted, because you think that I'm sitting at home and in case they ask me about me, I know what I'm gonna say. That is one of the most important interview questions that an interviewer could ever ask you. So tell me about yourself. What do you tell them?
Your professional background? Or some...
You tell them a little bit of both. My speech is, I happen to be one of the few people that you may meet who's a native of Dallas. I was educated in Dallas schools. I received my degrees in the UT Texas systems. I have a family. I enjoy reading. In my spare time, I volunteer with XYZ organizations. And I believe that when I look at who I am, that makes me compatible for this job. And when I look at who I am and I define myself for you, that makes me compatible and the perfect person for this role. But you don't need to tell them I've been married 5 times. I'm really serious, but really practice that and prepare and craft an answer. A little bit about you personal as it relates to the job that you're looking for. And then, what are your employer experiences? So, that old trap question. Have you ever been fired from a job? Or have you ever been asked to leave? We've cleaned it up. How would you answer that? Well, I was working at Hilton, and I abused my team member travel benefits. And I'm going to throw some real stuff out there. And I smoked weed while I was on business. Y'all think I'm playing. I smoked weed while I was on leisure travel, and the maid came in and found my pipe. And it got back to Hilton, and I hate them because they fired me, and I wasn't even at work. Is that... Can you say that again? So there we go with your image. It follows you everywhere you go.
What state was he in, though?
Huh?
What state was
It was not. That was the first thing when I heard that it was a property, I literally said, they gave me the property code, so I looked it up on the lobby, and I was like, well, it ain't Colorado.
Oh, this is a true story. Wow.
I just said that. But if we terminated you from Hilton, and I was really joking, so don't take me seriously. Just use your judgment. But literally, seriously, are you going to, if in fact you left a company because you felt like they were not treating you well, how do you respond to that question? and no employer or hiring manager or recruiter wants to hear how much you hated 5 employers ago and they just didn't treat you right. So literally, some of these things, how do I negotiate? Mike Holman gave a very good example in the last presentation. They were talking about sometimes one of our career barriers is that because, and Deshaun offered a statistic that said something like 60% of women will not apply for a job, or they won't apply for a job if they don't meet 60% of the criteria for the job. A man will apply for just any job. So his wife went back to work and they offered her a salary and she wasn't happy. And she said, well, they didn't offer me enough money. And he told her, well, you need to go back to them and just negotiate with them. She was afraid to do it. She did it. She got more money, not exactly the money that she asked for, but they met her in the middle somewhere where she was satisfied with the salary. So you have to sharpen your negotiation skills. And when you're doing a negotiation, you need to use the things that I'm saying that go into your brand. Your previous experience, your accomplishments in those positions. You can leverage, I will tell them in a minute. I noticed that your job posting did not say you needed to be certified, but I do want you to know that I've been certified since 1998, and I have a designation from the Society of Human Resources Management as a senior professional in HR, and now that the Society of the Human Resources Certification Institute now has a certification. So I've actually been certified at both levels. Plus I have a master's degree in business administration. And one of the points that I always make is that since I'm an accountant as a first career, I can read a financial, I understand business, and I can extrapolate those numbers into the kind of people strategies that I should be putting in place to make sure that you're successful and that you meet your organizational objectives. But you know why I can just rattle that off like that? Because I practiced. Okay? So, without further ado, Mr. Cooper.
I think you had one more that was coming up. That was about the
Okay, thank
articles
you.
showcase, yeah.
So, Tremaine and me shared a lot of articles and things that we were researching and Googling. And one of the things that I wanted to share that I thought was important, because the next thing we're going to do is how to build your brand, is I found this article by Joseph Liu, and he's a contributor for Forbes magazine in the career areas. And he wrote this article that said 5 ways to build your brand. So one of the things that he said, and we brought this up in the barriers to promotional opportunities, was say yes to relevant opportunities. So if your supervisor asks you, and I saw this happen one time, can you go to McLean for me and participate in that meeting because I'm unable to go? And the team member responded, no, I don't have anybody to watch my cat. So I'm really serious. So if someone asks you to go to McLean in this room and sit in on a meeting, how many of you would say no? See there? So what does that opportunity give you? To go to McLean and sit in on a functional meeting for your area. What's some of the benefits? Exposure to what? To influencers, decision makers, and also to be a leg up on what some of your operational objectives are for your particular functional area. So say yes. I mean, haven't you seen me? You saw me sweating at the 100-year celebration, right? At that basketball court. I was about to die. And so this is a true story. So Chris, all the executives had a time period that they were supposed to be at the Dunkin' booth. So when Chris came over to the basketball court, he was the last one. And he said, I said, I scored 40 points in a minute. And he said, no, you didn't. I said, so you do it. And he stood there, we're going at it, and he scores his 40. And I said, told you. And I said, now I'm thirsty, Chris, and I don't see the water. So we go over to the little booth that's regular for for Jade Waters, where they sell stuff, and Chris bought me some water. I'm telling you, you gotta say yes. Now this one is kind of a stretch, but instead of speaking at a conference, why not volunteer to make a presentation or to lead a departmental meeting? And then this one, I mean, why not? If you have the opportunity, say to your supervisor, your manager, I've been doing some research and I want to compare some of the other methods of revenue manager that some of the other companies use, and I want to tell the group how Hilton has an advantage in our revenue management strategy. And guess what that does for me? It's a retention strategy, because when you're thinking about jumping ship and going over there to those other people, now you know that Hilton's strategy is far above any of those other people out there who could be courting you. See? Kill two birds with one stone. Ask one question at every meeting you attend. What kind of question are you going to ask? And make sure the question that you ask is a relevant question, and a question that is going to net you some attention, but also net you learning something new, right? Because it may be something. Don't ever be afraid to ask a question. And if you don't want to ask it in a meeting, ask the presenter one-on-one. Step 4, networking internally beyond your immediate team. The easiest thing for you to do that is join a TMRG, join Inspire, literally.
Corporate challenge.
You're right, do corporate challenge, because the advantages of that is that on all of those committees that I just named, it's a cross section of all the functional areas in our area. And you're going to meet everybody, at least from senior directors down to your peers on those teams. And if you get on those committees and you do relevant work, somebody else is going to know you, and you're building your brand. And then share your voice with influencers. So let's roll back to the opportunity to fill in for your boss to go to a McLean meeting. So what'd you say? You meet decision makers, and you get the opportunity. Always share your voice. A quick example, and this is real juvenile, and you probably have heard it in New Hire Orientation before we move on, and we have about 20 minutes left. But my granddaughter came to the state fair with me because her school fair was on the same day, and her mama's a principal, and can you keep the baby? So she comes with me. She literally, the little Big Tex figure? She wanted to talk to Big Tex, but guess who Big Tex was talking to? Chris Nacetta. Mackenzie walked over and said, "Good morning, I'm Mackenzie. Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Chris." She said, "Chris, what do you do for Hilton? Because my Mia's the HR manager." So he said, "Well, Mackenzie, I'm the president and CEO." And she said, "Oh, that means that you're everybody's boss." And he goes, "High five me on that one." So she high fives him, and then she sticks her hand down here and she said, "Do you know about down low, Mr. Chris?" And he said, "Yeah." And of course, when he went to slap her hand, she drew it back. So there must have been this horrible look of trepidation on my face, and I'm sitting there calculating how much is in my 401k. What do I have at IRA? What did that last Social Security update say I was going to get at 62? And can I live in case I go back and I don't have a job? But think about it. A 7-year-old walks up to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, the #1 hoteler in the world, and treats him just like he's just anybody. But her true motivation was the Big Tex character, I'm telling you. So if you see Chris, that's why when Tremaine gets to this elevator speech and branding statement, it's going to be really important, because everybody that you see on that executive committee slide is in this building from time to time. And I'm going to leave you with, what would you do if you got on the elevator with the Chris Nacettas and the Katie Fallons and, the Doug Crays and, Alan Watts and Simon Vincent and Kristen Campbell? What would you do if you got on the elevator with them? Tremaine.
So, to that point, what would you do? What would you say?
Hello, how are you
You've got about 20 seconds. They're on the 11th floor in McLean, by the way, so it's about a 20-second ride if it's just you and them. So what would you say in that particular situation? How would you leverage your brand? What type of image would you want to relate to Chris Nacetta or to John Witter?
Introduce yourself, tell you what you do, and just introduce yourself.
Absolutely.
I rode the Ferris wheel with John Witter, but I just made small talk. I didn't have an elevator.
How long is the Ferris wheel?
That's a Ferris wheel, so the same car?
The big
Yeah.
one.
Oh, you got a lot of time, man.
So you did have some extra time to, promote yourself. You could be my boss at the end of that Ferris wheel ride. It didn't mean possible. But it happened to me. I was in an elevator with John Witter, and I was just recently moved to McLean about a year ago, and I really wasn't sure what to say, what to brag. For me, it doesn't come across very easy to talk about myself, and for a lot of people, that's the same way where it comes to them. But it's a wonderful opportunity when you get that chance to talk about your brand, to talk about what type of image you want to be portrayed, to leverage what type of skills that you want to market for yourself to leaders and decision makers in the organization. At the end of the day, everybody is looking at succession planning if you are a leader of a team. So in order for me to move on to my next step, I have to make sure that I have my succession plan in place for who can take my job on my team. And so as part of that, from a leadership perspective, it's making sure that I know what skills that my team can be marketed, and that's for myself when I get that opportunity to present that in front of a senior leader. So I know 4 o'clock is when we're scheduled to end, so I do understand if folks do need to leave, but for those that can stay, you have a piece of paper, you have a pen, I wanted to go through an exercise of creating, how do you go about building your personal brand. So when you have that opportunity to sit in front or stand in front of a senior leader or a hotel leader, a key partner of our management company, another coworker in the organization that you might have never met but you're working on a cross-functional project, be able to kind of leverage that opportunity. So how does it start? And you said it perfectly. Introduce yourself. Who are you? Making sure that you're able to share a little bit more about what you do for the organization and the value that you bring. So in this particular instance, in terms of how do you craft your speech, starting with your name is, I'll give it a try. My name is Tremaine Cooper, and my current role, I'm Director of Full Service Brand Management for the Americas. I oversee a team of 8 exceptional individuals who provide first contacts brand support for all of our hotels in the Americas. I also lead strategy and initiatives for our full service brands. Next part. I'm responsible for, again, that team of 8 individuals, making sure that we grow our team, that we provide adequate support to our hotels, along with implementing our strategies to improve the guest experience at all of our full-service properties, along with making sure that we drive revenue and return to our owners. And so for every individual in the room, I'm sure it's different for you or what it may be, but did want to take a few minutes, spend some time talking about what you're responsible for, why do you enjoy it. I personally enjoy working with people, and I like fixing things. And so for me, being able to fix something that is an opportunity is something that I enjoy working on. So whatever project that my boss brings to me, it's typically broken. And she's asking me to put it back together or to build something new. And so that's one of the things that links to my personal strengths, which is being able to build, being able to engage with our hotel leaders and get them to see the side of Hilton that we want them to see. A lot of times we ask our owners to do certain things, and it's a challenge for them to come on board, but I enjoy being in their shoes in a previous life and working with them in other roles within Hilton and outside of Hilton, so I can take that skill set and I enjoy being able to get them to come along. My career focus, one day, I'd like to be a global head. I'd like to be able to be a head of one of our lovely 16 or 17 brands. We keep adding new brands every week, it seems like, so I always lose count. But I love to be able to work on a strategy, being able to take one of our brands and bring it to fruition to what that next step is going to be. And so for me, that's one of the things that my career focus is how do I go about doing that? And so for everybody in the room, it's a little bit different. For some people, it might be marketing. For some people, it might be in operations, it might be revenue management. Whatever your particular discipline is, you know that better than anybody. So I recommend utilizing this as that guide to fill in your personal brand, to develop you have that opportunity to be in front of one of our senior leaders, even one of your fellow team members. Because you never know, the person next to you might be the hiring manager for your next job someday. And so it's an opportunity for you to really engage with them, to spend time, to learn a little bit more, as Cassie was talking about earlier, but also making sure that you're preparing yourself for that next step. And the last one, to prep for that next step, I'm currently working on Cornell classes and spending time with global leaders to see the other side of the picture that many of us don't see when it comes to development, when it comes to why do we say yes to this hotel deal in the middle of nowhere, which my friends in openings and revenue management can probably attest to, as well as other departments. But there is nuances to that. And so the global heads will tell you the reasons why. And so for me to be able to get to that level, I need to experience exactly what it is that they're doing, what's some of their focus, and how can I in turn leverage some of that knowledge and skill set so that I can continue to grow and develop. So one of the takeaways I would ask for everybody here, not to call it homework, but really for one's own personal development and growth, is leverage the template that you see here to help you go about developing your personal brand. Because every opportunity that you get, whether it's here in the office, have the pleasure of coming to McLean, do let us know. Happy to buy anybody coffee. But it's a wonderful opportunity to engage with individuals and to leverage this as a tool to communicate. So with that, wanted to see what questions might you have.
And if anybody wants to take a stab at it, Jermaine, I think we'll have time for that.
If you do have time, I know it's closer towards the end of the day and traffic here in Dallas seems to be pretty bad.
Not like Houston.
Not like Northern Virginia.
I had a question.
Sure.
Going back to the situation like you're stuck in like an elevator with an executive, I feel like a lot of people probably have that the opportunity, not the opportunity, but they come across that a lot. How do you set yourself apart from the others when you do want to like elevate yourself to them?
I would say, and love to hear Cassie's thoughts on it, I think it's being genuine. First of all, I think the first thing is actually taking advantage of it. Because many people would just be frozen. And I would try to do small talk like, hey, how about the weather? How's traffic? Things like that. Versus using that opportunity to at least get 15, 20 seconds and to talk about what is it that you do to the company and something that is a great positive for your team within the organization. I think taking advantage of it, but also being genuine. I really think when you're at that leadership level, you can kind of tell when somebody's trying to sell you something, and they can probably sniff that out rather quickly. And so the opportunity to, I think, just be very genuine in your approach and your nature and really be who you are is that opportunity to make sure that you come across to them as a credible individual, so that way when you see them next time in the cafeteria, they'll say hello, there's a smile, there's a nod, so there's a little bit of that sense of relationship, if you will.
It's Jermaine's stage.
Sure. Yes.
What's something that stands out to you in a person when you interview them? Like, what's some traits that you look for in someone?
Confidence. I think the ability to be confident in your skills and your skill set is certainly something that I look for as a hiring manager. Also the knowledge base, so being able to communicate to me in a particular department. So in my particular team that I have the pleasure of working alongside, so we are hotel support. So for you to be able to speak hotel lingo, to understand daily hotel operations is a big plus for our team, because you're going to be talking to general managers and directors of sales 90% of the time. So that's a big factor and focus for me. And also prep for the interview. We're going to ask you some of those basic questions, and Cassie did mention it. Tell me about yourself. You should be able to answer that question. Tell me a little bit more about your experience. Why do you want this job? If you can't answer those two questions, typically speaking, that's a bad start. But also some of the behavioral questions as well. There's a lot of things that I see Hilton moving towards now from an interviewing perspective of just trying to get a sense of who you are. I've read your resume. I have an understanding that you probably have the skill set, but how do you work under certain situations when you're under pressure? How do you deal with conflict? How do you handle time management? You know, so those are some of the things that people will look towards and as part of that environment.
Do you feel like you had that elevator moment where you presented yourself and then that was kind of how you got yourself up to that place in your career? Or do you feel like it was just like grinding really hard and then just having like a really perfect interview?
It was the latter for me because I was remote. So I'm originally from New Jersey. We won't talk sports because I know I'm in Dallas. But I'm originally from New Jersey, so I worked from home for about 6 years in openings. And so I rarely got the chance to go to McLean, rarely got the chance to interact with senior leaders. But thankfully, and for those that were in the last session with Deshaun and with Mike, and Deshaun talked about having somebody who would not only be your mentor, but would be your sponsor. Somebody who can advocate on your behalf, who has a seat at the table. And thankfully for me, it was my boss's boss, who was always saying every time there was an opportunity, hey, what about Tremaine? Do you know what he does? Do you see some of the work that he does? And then I also leveraged that every time I had an opportunity to work with other directors. At that time I was a manager. I would let my work speak for myself. And so it wasn't something that was going above and beyond, but it was that extra effort that impressed them so that when other people would ask and say, what's your thought about Tremaine? What's your image of him? What's his brand? It would come across as positive and hard worker, and that consistency was able to help me when I applied for this role.
I can attest to that because I was one of the departments that would work with him. So I would have an opportunity to understand his personal brand and his reputation. So it does follow you as you move through the company and all your interactions with everybody. I can talk to many, many different companies, and in the role that he had, he's working with many, many, many different departments. But everybody would be very consistent in what they're saying about Tremaine. So I can attest to that.
So would you say that you came across any barriers?
The barrier, a couple of barriers, yeah. So I think a few of the barriers for me was being remote, so not having that FaceTime. So it's a challenge. And I work, all of my team members are remote. And so I understand that the opportunity to move and the growth was a barrier. And so for me, I tried to overcome that by taking advantage of, there was an opportunity to go to McLean, volunteered. Wherever you needed me to go, I would say yes if there was some type of presence. So I tried to leverage that to my best interest. And also, I work on a team that's hotel professionals, but all of our BPS directors have been general managers, directors of sales, and I worked at a hotel for about 5 years. And so my experience was not nearly to their level. So I felt as if I had to work a little bit harder to prove myself because I was never a GM, was never an executive committee member. And so for me, that was one of my barriers, even though I went to hotel school, worked in a hotel, I've been working in the hospitality industry my entire life, that credibility came to be a little bit of an issue for some that have been around, a little bit more seasoned veteran hospitality professionals. And so for me, that barrier was just trying to prove myself to get over that hump. And then selfishly, I will say there are not many that look like me in hospitality, that look like us in hospitality, from a diversity perspective, whatever your version of diversity is. And so for me, that was also a sense of, working on a team, working on a leadership committee that looks a little bit different. So trying to make sure that I can be the first, if you will.
That's the hardest for some of us is, as far as the diversity, you could be working 3 times as hard as someone else and you never get noticed. Or they would give someone off the street an opportunity, but they won't give you an opportunity and you've been here for years. It's like, okay, what else do I have to do? Like, they keep moving the target.
It's tough. Even in my role, it's tough. I've been around performance support, and I think, looking at Vernon, he knows our team very well. I think there's 3 of us in a team of 50. So we are fairly small, but I do think the organization, I'll selfishly speak for my department and my team, I'll be honest, has gotten better at being able to advocate and being able to champion one's beliefs. But I also think that's where I was able to I was fortunate in openings to work with so many different departments that I was able to make relationships in other departments as well. And so whether it was honors, whether it was revenue management, our on-cue implementation team, you know, my ability to kind of network with them and collaborate with them was really designed to such so that for me, I want to do a good job because my parents always taught me if you're going to put your name on something, it needs to stand for something. Don't bring home any F's. So that was something that I always took to heart and still do to this day. And so whenever I had a pleasure of working on opening a hotel, I wanted to make sure that it was being represented in such a way that was positive. And so other departments, I wanted to make sure they could also say nice things about me. So for me, it wasn't just that my boss, because you know sometimes you can have the greatest of bosses, but they might not have the ability to sponsor you. And so I wanted to make sure that other folks could be my sponsor as well within the organization. But it is a challenge. It really is. I don't think there's a perfect answer to how do you get around that, if you will. I do think there's working with our friends in HR, but I also think it's really kind of building your own brand from a committee, and especially as someone who worked remotely, that is what it took me a while to get there, a few years, but consistently making that change and relocating to McLean, which for me was showing that I really wanted to grow my career.
And that was a good point because that was one of the points that Deshaun and Mike Holman made in the promotional barriers. I know sometimes your greatest fear is relocation, but when I introduce orientation, I always say that its title is a world of opportunities, and there truly are. You have team members who worked just as revenue analysts or specialists who went to Shanghai. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go to Shanghai, right? But or remotely, but I've literally transferred team members to Shanghai, Dubai, Watford, and I've also seen them come back. And when they came back, they had just another dimension to their experience, and that was international. But I want you to keep doing what you're doing. And in your case, Phyllis works on every committee, and I think that networking is your next step in finding a sponsor. I'm really, really, really serious about that. And it's going to be tough sometimes because sometimes we start one little thing. Have you ever heard the thing that negative communication travels 11 times faster than anything that you could ever do that's positive? So that's why that brand is so important to you. And just make sure that you've done what you're supposed to do and then push for yourself. You're going to have to be your own advocate. I mean, I told you I sent an email to Katie Fowler. Seriously, I did. I sent one to Katie and to Mike with some concerns that I kind of won't talk about here, but I had some concerns. Those concerns have been eating at me for a very long time, but I waited until I was not emotional and I constructed the perfect email because I told them that as an HR professional, I should be able to be part of the solution. And I believe that I can be. And when I introduce this to you, anytime you need me there, I will be there. But I need you to address these things. And so that got sent up to the next level. So Mike Holman and Katie Fallon are the executive sponsors for the African American Team Member Resource Group. So I did have a connection with them because of me being the lead here. So I realized that I had been frustrated for months potentially, and I could have sent that email long before that, and I did get a response. And I believe the fact that I brought it to light in a way that was not negative. I didn't blame anybody. I just basically said that these are my observations. And from an HR perspective, I believe that we have great team members along all of our lines of diversity. And what can I do to help bring attention to the fact that I'm seeing some very qualified people not be able to go into positions and into roles? And I'm not saying it's because of their diversity. I'm just saying, how do I help with the perception that that is the reason versus that is the reason? And I got a lot of attention. And so sometimes you're going to have to just take that step. You're going to have to ask for a meeting with the Chris Reelroys of the world. What did I do? I had the nerve to bring HBCUs into this campus and had them shake hands with some HBCU vice presidents and chancellors and that kind of stuff a couple of years ago. And we've seen the needle move just a little bit. However, we put an opportunity out there, did we not? We went to about 10, 11 HBCUs and sent a flyer that said we're having an HBCU recruiting event. Now, mind you, the sky opened up and heaven poured out a blessing with rain and a whole bunch of hail and a whole bunch of other stuff. And a lot of people said, like Grambling, they didn't trust bringing their vans from Louisiana 5 hours to Dallas, but we put forth the effort. So the attention is there, and they're making strides in that. But the same thing with your brand. Don't ever be afraid. They talked about bold and courageous and that kind of stuff in that last presentation. So Vernon is going to conduct a raffle, but Tremaine, before we do that, we have a budget for our TMRGs, and we just don't have a whole lot of money. However, you know what happened? Yes.
Same here. In the last presentation, I know there was some people here. Now, for me, I only knew about mentorship, and I know Sean mentioned
Sponsoring
as well. So I don't know if you want to just take a
Okay,
minute to explain
so the
that,
difference
'cause I
between,
don't know.
okay, so a mentoring relationship is very formal. And it may be with somebody you don't know, and you guys decide that you're gonna meet for 15 minutes once a month. And you're gonna use that person for your sounding board, right? And say, I just found myself in a difficult situation. I made a mistake. How do I recover from it? When you have a sponsor, that is a person, just look at sponsorship. So that is a person who literally would call up. You just gave a perfect example. It was his boss and his boss's boss. He applied for a position, and his sponsors may have put in a good word for him. So you need someone that you get to know at a level, they trust you, you trust them, that they take you on, and for lack of a better word, as a professional project, and they help you develop your career. They could recommend you for jobs or even give you the hard feedback that you need to have when you're describing something for them like that. So that's the difference between sponsors and mentors. And I'm telling you, go find your sponsor. Just be bold and courageous. I know we are a very good company. I will be the first to say that. I love working at Hilton, and there are times when I have to make personal decisions, and I get out my piece of paper and I do the cons and I do the pros, and the pros always err on the side of being here. One reason is because I made a whole lot of money as an accountant, and especially when I got to management, but it wasn't my soul work. And it was when I started to realize that my job as a leader was to help develop people that I knew I was in the wrong profession. I took a severe pay cut, went back to grad school, got a master's in HR, and I had to start from the bottom. So I started out as an HR generalist before I was ever a manager, but my manager role came because I found a job that said it was the business manager for a medical company with about 200 team members, and I was gonna be HR and I had to do the financials. So that was the perfect job for me. But I spent my focus on changing the HR part of the organization because of the other stuff I had. But I spent my time, they didn't have benefits. I spent my time going out and convincing them that they could afford, because after all, right, I had the financials, but I convinced them that they could afford to provide team members benefits, even though they gave team members $100 a paycheck to help them go out and buy benefits, but it still wasn't like offering them. And it took a whole lot of convincing. So sometimes you just have to step out there on what some of us, I told you I post from church. So it's like you just have to step out on your belief systems and believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, that's the key right there. Believe in yourself. So nobody ever has to tell me who I am as a person, because I know my brand. My brand is people. There's nothing that either one of you could ever come to me as an HR professional and tell me, and even if I can't solve your problem, I'm going to give you some advice and some resources to help you solve your problem. So with that, Tremaine, it has been a very pleasure working with you on this project, and I know that Amazon, you can't go wrong. So we have this little tradition now of every time we get a speaker, we just present them with a certificate, and he has an Amazon gift card. And again, thank you not only for coming, but just for the opportunity, and it's your opportunity too.